Well, let's discuss the upcoming Democratic Alliance National Elective Conference, and we are joined now by Helen Zille, the DA's Federal Council chairperson. Ms. Zille, thank you very much for your time. In December of 2022, this was ahead of the ANC's Nasrec conference, you wrote the following in an opinion piece, and I want to quote you directly now. A political party in a democracy starts to die when it can no longer define its core idea, when it loses sight of its political purpose. Allow me to turn those words against your party and ask what you believe is the DA's political purpose in the South African political sphere. I think you're muted.
Our political purpose is very clear.
Yeah.
Our purpose is to ensure that South Africa can work as a constitutional democracy with non-racialism, the rule of law, and a capable state in which the party is separate from the state.
Put that vision against what voters have observed in coalition governments since November 2021. Do you think that your party has endeared itself to the South African electorate?
Well, obviously, if we are going to be able to implement our vision fully, we need an overall majority. And where people have given us an overall majority, as in Cape Town, we have really delivered on that commitment. In Mossel Bay, we have delivered on that commitment. In the Western Cape, we're delivering on that commitment. In Midvaal, we're delivering on that commitment. In Mngeni, we're delivering on that commitment. So it depends what voters vote for. In Johannesburg, only 26% of the voters voted for the DA. So it's a little bit unfair of voters to say, if only 26% of the voters in Johannesburg voted for us, for example, that the DA must deliver on 100% of its commitment. It can't work that way. Coalitions are extremely difficult to manage. I know. I was once leading a 7-party coalition in Cape Town before we won an overall majority there. So the bottom line is simply this. Where the voters vote for us and give us an overall majority, we can deliver fully on our commitment over time. Obviously, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. But in Cape Town, they've been under DA administration there for about 17 years, and you can really see the difference. And the difference is emerging very well in the Western Cape too, as you can see from the employment figures in the latest Labour Force survey. So where the DA governs, over time, we deliver on that commitment. But it's up to the voters first to give us that mandate.
The era of majorities, Ms. Zille, I suspect it's coming towards an end somewhat, unless, of course, you tell me different. Perhaps 2024 will tell us that. But at least in the local government sphere, that seems to be the trend. So, in other words, the DA may not likely lead with an outright majority, but again, I still want to use the local government outcomes. In 2016, you took over Tshwane. Yes, it wasn't an outright majority, but you were there for a considerable time up until recently. And if you are to be judged based on what you did in Tshwane, that does not make the DA any more attractive than the ANC, does it?
Well, Tshwane was not a success, absolutely. And when we look at the factors behind it, it's very clear, and our analysis shows what they are. And putting the place under the ANC's administration made things infinitely worse. But the thing is, we've never had a stable coalition in Tshwane. It's always been highly unstable. And instability in government makes for bad government, no matter who's in charge. So we've got Celia Brink elected now at last on, I think, the 4th attempt. And it's a razor-thin majority. So it depends on whether we can consolidate a stable coalition there and govern properly. And we realize it's our last chance in Tshwane to get things right, but it also depends on the coalition partners and whether they will enable us to maintain stability or whether people will be bought off again by the ANC as they have bought off people in the past for better offers and the politics of extortion. So people must understand if they want blue government and a full commitment from the DA, we need to get enough votes to do it.
Corruption and incompetence. Political observers will tell us that these have become synonymous with the ANC rule. The question to you is, why should the voters think that the DA is any different here, given what we have just discussed in Tshwane? And then, on the corruption score, what happened to Malusi Boy in Cape Town? What is it that he has done?
Well, I don't know what Malusi Boy has done. All we know is that there is a police investigation. But if you look at what happened to Malusi Boy, he was immediately suspended, and he is now going to face a full police investigation and presumably go to trial. That is very, very different. We don't keep people who are under serious police investigation in the highest offices, as Cyril Ramaphosa does in his cabinet. And we don't cover up these things. I mean, for example, we now know that at least 2 cabinet ministers or 2 people in the very highest offices of this land are allegedly implicated in serious coal pipeline corruption vis-à-vis Eskom. But it's business as usual for the ANC. Obviously, the DA is made up of human beings, but some human beings are going to be tempted at times. But when they are, the DA acts completely differently from the way that the ANC acts.
I'll
we are
argue
accountable.
Can I argue different?
You can argue different. Always you can argue different.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I would like to understand from the DA, fine, you've taken Malusi Boy out of the mayoral committee, but he remains a councillor. And I put it to you that you are gambling here, because unless and until the police charge him, he may possibly get his job back. So, again, how are you different to the ANC?
We're extremely different. First of all, you have to accept the core principle in law that you are innocent until proved guilty. If that wasn't the case, anybody who saw a political opponent and wanted to get rid of them would simply lay an accusation, lay a charge against somebody at a police station and get them finally suspended from office. You can't do that. You've got to allow the person to reply. You've got to allow a person the right to a fair trial. But he's immediately been suspended. We cannot, on the basis of an allegation, before a trial and before an adjudication by an independent court, assume that he must be entirely kicked out. We've suspended him from the MACO. He is now suspended from office. And that is as far as we can go, believing in the rule of law. Otherwise, if you can simply be accused of anything by any of your political opponents and then be kicked out and not be a councillor and not be a member of a party anymore, it would open the door for serious abuse of that. And people would be accused of all sorts of things which may have no basis in fact. I'm not saying this doesn't have a basis in fact. I'm saying that we've acted because the police are doing an investigation, but we are waiting for the law to take its course. And we haven't continued with business as usual. He is not in high office, as, for example, cabinet ministers are in the ANC, who are accused of serious crimes, and we don't cover things up. I've just come back from Mpumalanga, and I'm still quite shaken at the extent of the political assassinations that go down there, the fact that no one is seemingly held accountable, the fact that the rule of law doesn't seem to be working there. And so where the rule of law does work, as in the Western Cape and Cape Town, it is something to celebrate.
If he's not charged, ultimately, are you going to reinstate him? Because he may come back and say, by removing him as MACO member, you've already prejudged him that he is guilty.
I'm not the mayor of Cape Town, and I do not appoint the MACO. The DA believes in the separation of party and state. Jordan Hill-Lewis is the mayor of Cape Town, and he constitutes his MACO. Now, he does pass his MACO through the DA's federal executive, but we can only raise questions about the suitability of a MACO member if there's serious good cause to do so, but we cannot appoint Jordan Hill-Lewis's MACO member for him.
How do you respond to an opinion that says Malusi Boy is an example of the Democratic Alliance, and this is actually a view that is held by one of the stakeholders in the Western Cape, that corruption must be synonymous with a black face, and therefore that is why Malusi Boy is, I suppose, the casualty here. How do you respond to those kinds of opinions?
That's such a cheap, baseless argument. Corruption has nothing to do with the skin color of any person. The DA deals directly with any allegations of corruption, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the color of a person's skin. You know that people have been suspended and fired from the DA before. I myself asked 2 cabinet ministers to resign. From that, it must be absolutely patently clear that it has absolutely nothing to do with the color of a person's skin, and it's cheap politics to pretend it does by people who have no other argument and no other rational argument to make except race.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to my next question, therefore, as to what ordinary South Africans should expect of the incoming leadership of the Democratic Alliance in terms of its demographic profile, because this is the one element, I suppose, that just won't get off your back as the Democratic Alliance.
Well, the irony is that the DA is the only party that has a demographically diverse leadership. The only party. The ANC is normally 100% uniracial. Most other parties are 100% uniracial. And it's a great irony that the media only ever focuses on the DA when it talks about diversity. And the DA is the only party that has a diverse leadership, and I expect it to have a diverse leadership after the Congress.
Is that the kind of leadership that you think will pip the ANC out of its, at least up until now, the more than 50% share of the vote?
Well, the bottom line is that we believe in a certain set of values and principles, and non-racialism is an important value for the DA. Not all South Africans want non-racialism. Some want a country for one race only, and obviously those people are not going to vote for the DA. And for as long as a majority of South Africans do not believe that we have to build this party and this country together, it's going to be difficult to get over 50%. The point is that slowly but surely South Africans are coming to the understanding that the ANC is running this country into the ground and destroying every institution that once existed and destroying the prospects for the future. And as we always say, there's only one way this country can eventually be governed, and that is as a non-racial constitutional democracy under the rule of law. And that is what the DA stands for. We will continue to stand for this, and we will continue to inspire hope for the people of South Africa that one day South Africa can be governed in this way, and we have strong faith in the people of South Africa that they will eventually vote for that vision.
Allow me to get your thoughts on the Social Research Foundation poll. It polled about 1,500 people, and they seem to be on the money if you perhaps look back at what they did in the previous election. They seem to suggest that the ANC will retain the 50% election share. If that is the case, if that turns out to be true, that is, in a way, a reflection on how poorly the opposition is performing in the country. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree. First of all, a week is a long time in politics. But you know, all we can do is govern as best as we can where we govern. Everybody agrees that where the DA has a strong enough majority and where we are able to build stable coalitions with parties that are not extorted by the ANC and the opposition, we govern far better. And in the end, elections are about the quality of your government, because the quality of your government makes an enormous difference to the way people are able to live, especially over the long term. So it's more a reflection, frankly, of the motivating forces behind the way people vote than it is a reflection on the way the DA governs. Because everybody, I think, who has ever analyzed all of the statistics that even come from the national government into the quality of life between where the DA governs and other parties govern will see that the DA governs better. So in the end, that should be why people vote. Who is going to deliver the best quality of government?
The departure of black members of the DA, and not just ordinary members, I'm talking about people who have been in leadership positions. Do you fear that that is going to alienate this elusive black vote that the DA has been struggling for years?
You know, it's again such a double standard. Action SA lost 6 leading members in the last 10 days. I don't see any analysis of the black exodus of Action South Africa. The point is that for every person who leaves a party, and a party is a voluntary organization, people come and go all the time. The only people who come and go that are ever analyzed, especially in a racist way, is if you happen to leave the DA and you are black, and you leave for any reason. It's a racist analysis from the media who don't ever apply that standard to any other party. I'd love to hear you apply a racial standard to the ANC. I don't think they've got any white leaders now, or any white members, frankly, left anymore. Even Carl Niehaus has abandoned them. When are you going to start applying a racial analysis to any other party except the DA? We are the only diverse party. You will see over the weekend, if you're going to look honestly, and let's see if people do, because rarely is an honest lens applied to the DA, especially from the media's side. If you do that, you will see the most diverse Congress. You will see leadership at every level of all races, of people who realize that we can only build this country together. And that is the objective, and that is what we must succeed in doing.
Well, let's be fair in our analysis as well, though, Helen Zille, and say that people like Derek Hanekom and others, they're still in the ANC. Yes, it's not what is ideal, I'm sure they would say, but they do have a number of white people that are still within their ranks.
I think Derek Hanekom and Cameron Dugmore are perhaps the only two that you can point to. Frankly, it's called spot the whitey. I mean, the bottom line is, stop using race analysis. I couldn't care who supports other parties. What I do care about very deeply is the value set of the Democratic Alliance. It is non-racialism, constitutionalism, the rule of law, a capable state, the separation between party and state, and all of those things that make a country successful. Very few countries in the world have succeeded in achieving that objective. South Africa must be one of them, and the Democratic Alliance is leading that objective.
Well, let me say this. When you say stop with your racist analysis, I would argue and say that you brought that to yourself. In particular, you, Helen Zille, because people like Tony Leon today were able to say that the likes of Musa Maimane were an experiment because you brought them into the DA believing that they would attract the much-needed black vote. And then when they leave, they are told they were an experiment. How do you explain that?
I have never, ever said that any human being is an experiment.
Tony Leon did.
Ever.
He's a former leader of this party.
Well, please ask Tony Leon about what he says. I cannot answer for other people. All I can say is that no human being is an experiment. The DA did look for a while at setting race as the key criterion. I think that is what Tony Leon was referring to. And we have evaluated that. And all our black leaders today are elected purely on merit because they are totally fit for purpose.
Final question to you. Why is it that you are still in contention to lead the Democratic Alliance as Federal Council Chair? Do you still think that you have more to give?
Well, I can work hard. I can work 18 hours a day through all conditions.
Yeah.
I know how to manage things. I know how to run things. And I am going to be elected unopposed, which means that clearly the Federal Council thinks so too.
You're not fearful that some within your ranks are saying you may alienate the votes that we're looking for?
The bottom line is we do polling all the time. And what people say off the top of their head, in a thumb suck with their finger in the wind, is often not the case in reality on the ground. Furthermore, my role now is an administrative role. I do mostly the running of the interface between the political arm of the party and the administration of the party. And nothing can work without a really strong administration and the capacity to build internal institutions. I'm able to bring strong internal institutions. I, with great respect, have probably done as much to diversify the DA as any other leader, and I'm absolutely committed to non-racialism in the party. Everybody knows that. And if people want to vote for good governance, well, they know where to vote for.
Helen Zille, best of luck for the upcoming conference at the weekend, the DA's Federal Council Chairperson.